On today's show, the New York Knicks trading for Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks from the Detroit Pistons. Quite possibly the Knicks, the winners of this year's NBA trade deadline. How do Bogdanovic and Burks help this Knicks team out? How do they complement Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle? Plus, what needs to happen for the Knicks to be able to make a push for the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference? It's all coming up right here at Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates to choose from. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within the first 24 hours. Look, LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Knicks, Alex Wolfe. You can track down wherever you listen. Well, my turn now. Sweet. Fun. All right. Third time's the charm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Joining us now is the host of Locked On Knicks, Alex Wolfe. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts and on YouTube. Just search Locked On Knicks. Alex, the possible NBA trade deadline winners, the New York Knicks, with their acquisition of Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. We're going to unpack what those pickups mean for this Knicks team. But let's take a look very quickly at the outgoing pieces for the Knicks to make this trade happen. So centered around Quentin Grimes, who I think is a guy who's arguably had a lot of success when given the opportunity in New York, as well as Evan Fournier, Malchi Flynn, and Ryan I always struggle with his last name. Arcidiacono. There we go. I always I read it and then it stumbles me up because I never know like the phonetics right off the rip. All right, Arcidiacono. Thank you so much for that. So 4 players out, 2 players in. Let's start with Quentin Grimes, though, because he's a guy that I thought had a lot of success in New York when given the opportunity. So why was it time to move on from him, even though he's a young player with a potentially exciting future?
So like the one sentence way that I thought of describing it on our show recently when I was thinking about it was, I think a lot of Knicks fans thought that this year he was going to be a lot more actualized in terms of who he was going to be as an NBA player. And unfortunately, he sort of regressed further backwards towards being theoretical, which is something that it's kind of how you view, young players, right? Especially when they're on their rookie deals, when it's found money, like every player that's on a rookie deal is found money in the NBA if they're playing well, because they're getting paid less than what they're going to get paid once those 3 or 4 years is up. And you have to pay them, like their big boy salary, like their actual worth in the NBA. And so at the end of last year, obviously in the playoffs, he had the huge iconic moment where he like tweaked his knee or whatever, and then still like got right back up, D'd up Jimmy Butler, stole the ball from him, forced the game 6 in that series against the Heat. I mean, that's going to live on in my brain forever. It's going to live on in all Knicks fans' brains forever, I feel like. And yet this year he came in, the shooting was way less consistent, which was something that you really needed out of him. He wound up then ceding his starting job to Dante DiVincenzo, and DiVincenzo was kind of doing exactly what you wanted out of Grimes. Maybe not quite the one-on-one man defender that Grimes can be at his best, but certainly a great team defender in DiVincenzo, and then he's just been absolutely shooting the lights out this year. So it kind of just reached this point where it was like, Grimes was coming in, he was getting 13, 15, something like that minutes per game. And then he's talking to the media earlier this year and is saying like, oh, I feel like I have such a short leash. The ball feels like it weighs 100 pounds. Every shot feels super consequential. And it just started adding up where it was like, Yeah, I think this team is just more ready, especially after a 14-2 January where they're looking at themselves saying, man, like if a couple things break right, could this team potentially make a run in the playoffs this year? Like ECF, maybe like finals if things go like super, super well, like with how well this roster is constructed, if you get good playoff performances out of everybody. And I think the Knicks just kind of looked at that and said, well, Grimes isn't happy here. If we can sub Grimes in for the reported 2 first-round picks that the Pistons had wanted for Bogdanovic just last year, plus, Burks, who's a solid player as well, then I think it's worth it. And, I kind of agree. I think that they used Grimes instead of those first round picks. And, they have plenty of first round picks coming up that they can use in other trades or use to restock the sort of farm system, so to speak. So I didn't have a huge problem with moving on from him, even if it was a little painful given, where we thought things might be going with Grimes going into this year.
Sometimes you got to make those, those consequential kind of win now related moves where, yeah, Grimes might, in the future, you might look back and be like, yeah, Grimes turned out to be a better, more impactful player than maybe a Bojan Bogdanovic or an Alec Burks down the line. But for what this Knicks team needs right now, those are your win now pieces. So let's talk about those two guys. What do those two guys bring to this Knicks team?
I mean, really, it's shooting to the bench unit, and some stability and depth. I mean, the Knicks just really, they're ravaged by injury right now. I mean, they have 3. It was with Grimes prior to the trade being out. They were out 4 rotation players. Really, I mean, if you count Jericho Sims as like a emergency rotation player, he's been out for the last few games as well, which has been consequential since the Knicks now top 3 centers, at least like true centers, have been out for the last like number of games here. With Isaiah Hartenstein re-aggravating his Achilles injury, Mitchell Robinson still out. And then obviously the 2 biggest guys that you have out are Julius Randle and OG Anunoby right now, who should be on roughly equal time frames, about 3 weeks from now. Hopefully both of them will be coming back. You're helped out by the trade deadline and all that. But to get back to the Burks and Bogdanovic part of it, I mean, I think the Knicks were just like, we need some help now and we need some depth for later, because in the playoffs, you want to have a large roster of guys you can call from for shooting if you need it. I mean,
when you say depth now, help now, but also depth later, you don't get the sense that this was a trade that they made as kind of like a Band-Aid fix. Like, hey, we're really banged up now. We need, like, you would have liked to see them make this trade even if everybody was healthy, right?
For sure. Yeah. Okay. Because what happened in that Anunoby trade is that they lost a lot of creation in that second unit by dealing Emmanuel quickly. Like, that was the biggest consequence. And obviously the starting lineup with the Knicks, when fully healthy now, is like nonsensically good. Like, they've been the best lineup in the NBA this year, is the Knicks starting lineup with Anunoby in there with Brunson, DiVincenzo, Randall, and Hartenstein. But their bench used to be their biggest strength. Like last year, you would say the Knicks have maybe the strongest bench in the NBA. And then after the trade, it was like the bench would come in. You'd be like, okay, we're just kind of keeping things treading
until to tread water, right? Until the starters can get back in.
The starters get back in, it was a little more painful. So they needed that creation. That's what Burks will give you. I mean, he's not a point guard necessarily. Like, if he were on the table, a guy like Malcolm Brogdon was maybe like the top of our list, like in terms of like, this guy can really like run a second unit. Burks will just give you some shot making and stuff like that. Bogdanovic, though, was a huge surprise, because I don't think that most Knicks fans would have thought that you could have acquired both those guys without giving up at least a first round pick or 2, like some of those protected ones the Knicks have or something. The fact they were able to get him without touching any of those first round picks was a huge win, both for now and later, because now I think the Knicks have a guy that once he gets comfortable can hopefully slot in for Randall. Maybe we'll see that after the All-Star break. He came off the bench in his first game, probably just to get acclimated with his teammates and whatever. But if we hit after the All-Star break, I would hope to see him out there starting in place of Randall. But then once Randall comes back, he's going to be the guy that'll probably get like 25 to 30 minutes a game and is a consistent 20-point per game scorer in the NBA. I mean, he's, to my eye, got to be maybe the best bench scorer in the NBA now. Like, if he's going to consistently be playing a bench role once this team is healthy. And so I think that was a huge win for the Knicks, like, because that was what they needed. They needed just more punch off the bench to make that unit stronger again. And they accomplished that goal in spades, I think, with the trade.
And he's a guy that you can very clearly stagger and let him get some minutes playing alongside, sure, Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, when healthy, all that. And a guy that's a perfect complement to guys who are going to draw as much attention as those two guys do. Now, look, right now, Knicks are sitting 4th seed, pretty pretty comfortably fourth seed in the Eastern Conference, 33-20, a game back of the third seeded Bucks, a few games back of the two seeded Cavaliers. Slim chance that they would be able to catch the Celtics. I don't think the Celtics are really going anywhere. They got that number one seed, feels all sewn up. But what needs to happen for the Knicks to catch one or both of those teams in the standings post All-Star break, right? To go on a run and potentially finish as the two seed in the East.
I think it's pretty simple. It's just they got to be healthy. I mean, that's it. There's a lot up in the air with the health of this team right now. So the injuries as they stand right now, if I was just give them a quick rundown for anyone that's not familiar, Julius Randle dislocated shoulder in his non-shooting shoulder, so it's his right shoulder. They said nothing's torn, or at least that's the implication. They said they're going to wait 2 to 3 weeks, and it happened, I guess, about a week and a half ago now. So 2 to 3 weeks was the timetable to look at that again and see the course of action and if rehab was going to work. My indication maybe there's a partial tear or something, which I know from having dealt with a shoulder thing and myself in the past can just heal. Your body is capable of healing a partial tear, but not a full tear. And so I think they're hoping that things just get better and with some rest and whatever. So his health will be huge. OG Anunoby, obviously, too, was such a huge part of them having that huge January. It was literally all thanks to him. Gets a bone spur removed from his elbow, which they say is going to be a 3-week recovery, but seems pretty cut and dry. There is precedent for it. Gavin looked it up the other day, my co-host, and Joe Johnson had a similar procedure a number of years ago, and it only kept him out 3 weeks, and it was very clean. He came right back in, started playing again. So hopefully that's the case for him. Mitchell Robinson had an issue with his foot back in December, which he got operated, or his ankle, I should say, back in December, which he got operated on. They said 8 to 10 weeks. We're now right smack dab in the middle of that time frame for reevaluation. So hopefully we'll hear something about him coming out of the All-Star break, I would think. And then Isaiah Hartenstein has been dealing with Achilles tendonitis, which is just an overuse thing, but obviously one that with something as important as your Achilles, that if they continue overusing could potentially stress the tendon to the point of something catastrophic like an Achilles tear happening. So he just kind of needs to be managed for the rest of the year and kept an eye on. So if all those guys come back healthy, this team has the potential to make whatever run they want to make. And, I'm with you. I think it would be a stretch to try to catch the Celtics for the number one seed, but I don't think it's a stretch to say that this team could end up a top 2 seed in the Eastern Conference this year if they're able to get healthy in quick order after the All-Star break and can put together as good of play as they did prior to this rash of injuries that's hit them. So we'll see how it goes, but that's really it for me because the play is there. The identity is there. They are going to beat the crap out of you on defense. They have so much 3-point shooting talent now, and they have 2 superstars that are playing the best ball of their career in Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle. As long as Randle comes back healthy, they're in really, 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 really good shape going towards the stretch run this year, as long as they get healthy. Huge caveat.
The play is there. The identity is there. That is a bar. I like that. I love the confidence. How will Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks help this Knicks team going forward? Can they get healthy and maybe make a push for the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference? You're going to have us covered for all of that and so much more over at Locked On Knicks. Alex, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Of course. Always happy to be here.